The Rebbe starts off the Sikha by relating a story that the Frierdiker Rebbe told, that on Parshas Vayishlach of the year Tovkuf Lamed Gimel, it would have been the last Shabbos that the Mezritcher Magid was physically alive in this world. As he was in bed, he said a Torah in the presence of the Chavraya Kadisha, his holy Talmidim, on the words Vayishlach Yakov Malachim, that Yakov sent Malachim, where Rashi translates Malachim Mamish, literally Malachim. The Mezritcher Magid translated Rashi's words as Malachim Mamish, that the Mamish of the Malachim, that's what he sent to Esav. In other words, the actuality of the Malachim, the lower part of the Malach, what you may call the guf of the Malach, as opposed to the Ruchnius, the spirit of the Malach remained with Yakov. So the Rebbe asks a number of questions on this. Number one, we understand that the reason why Yakov is sending Malachim to Esav, not other human beings, obviously is because he figures that in order to elevate, to refine, to deal with Esav, he needs some special koyach, the koyach of a malach. If that's the case, you would think the main part you need from a malach is the spiritual, and the more spirit of the malach, the better. Not leaving the spirit behind and just sending the guf. The Rebbe also asks, what does it even mean to leave the guf, the spirit behind and sending the guf, where even by a human being, the guf and the nefesh are not really things that can be separated by themselves, and the guf, the body without the soul, has no power on its own, and certainly by a malach, you would assume that the guf is always only secondary to the nefesh. What would it mean to send the guf without the nefesh? The Rebbe also asks, if we look at Rashi's words, Malachim Mamish, what is he coming to emphasize? What's Rashi coming to negate? That it is that he didn't send physical people, he sent malachim. In other words, the word mamish is coming to emphasize more and more that it's a malach, something of spirit, rather than something of the physical nature. According to the Mezritcher Magid, it comes as exactly the opposite. That the word mamish, that very word which Rashi is trying to emphasize that it was literally a malach, the Mezritcher Magid is coming and saying that that word is actually coming to tell us exactly the opposite, that it's only the lower and more physical, corporal, actual part of the malach, as opposed to the spirit. The Rebbe says, based on all of this, we can understand that when the Mezritcher Magid said that Yaakov Avinu only sent the spirit as opposed to the guf, it does not mean that there was a separation over here, and only the guf went, and not the spirit. The spirit remains with Yaakov. Rather, of course, Yaakov Avinu sent both of them. But as the malach is by Esav, with his guf and his nefesh, it's constantly felt and recognized that the only part I'm by Esav with is my body, meaning I'm only there to fulfill a purpose. It's only secondary to who I really am. Who am I really? Where is my spirit? My main thing, which is my spirit, always remains with Yaakov. Like we know the concept, b'mokem shemachshavte shel adam, where your mindset is, it's as if you're there. So when the Malachim with their spirit are by Yaakov, it's not coming to take away that they're not fully by Esav. But as they are by Esav, in spirit they still remain with Yaakov. Based on this, says the Rebbe, we now understand that there's no contradiction between what Rashi is saying in the word mamish and the Mezritcher Magid, because what Rashi is saying is that Yaakov Avinu sent the very Malachim, the very Malachim mamish in the literal sense. But how do we understand that? The way a malach could go in the literal sense to Yaakov, that's because the reason he has the ability to do what he's doing is because in spirit, as the malach, as the Mezritcher Magid explains that in spirit he always remains with Yaakov Avinu, and that's why they could go and accomplish this mission. The Rebbe now goes ahead and connects this to the timing the Mezritcher Magid said it, and the special herois that we have from this. And the Rebbe says, as mentioned before, that this was said just before the Istalkus of the Mezritcher Magid. The Talmidim were there, and especially the Alter Rebbe was there. We know that the Alter Rebbe had a special chavivus, was specially cherished by the Mezritcher Magid. As Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev said, he said, the expression he used was, we all of the Talmidim of the Magid, we all ate out of the same bowl, so to speak, but he, the Alter Rebbe, he took the very best. In other words, that he was especially connected to the Magid and the Magid's Torah, If that's the case, we can understand that this Hayrah that the Mezritcher Maggid said so close to the time of his passing has a special Hayrah in the Seder Avodah generally of Chassidus and specifically to the Alter Rebbe and Chassidus Chabad. Also, says the Rebbe, we know that the Mezritcher Maggid said to the Alter Rebbe that Yud Tes Kislev is our special day of Ilula, our special day of celebration. The Mezritcher Maggid passes away on Yud Tes Kislev, and years later, the Alter Rebbe has his Chag HaGeula on Yud Tes Kislev. So again, we understand, since this is just being said just before Yud Tes Kislev, we understand there's a special connection. In order to explain this, the Rebbe has a look at the general idea of Afotzas HaMayonos Chutza. We know the main Yafutzu Meinesecha Chutza, spreading of Chassidus to the outside, started after Yud Tes Kislev. And when we speak about the Mayonos being spread, this isn't only true in regards to Chassidus itself, but also, as the Rebbe is going to explain, this is also true in regards to Yidden. Because Yidden and Torah are all one, and Yidden also have their level of what's considered a wellspring and what it would mean to be spread to the outside. So the Rebbe explains, we know we have the concept of Nigla de Torah, the revealed part of Torah, which usually we could relate to and understand in a much more open and revealed and easy way. Whereas the Nister de Torah, similar to the Neshama, like a Neshama, which we can't understand and grasp so much, it's not as tangible. Nevertheless, Chassidus came along. This is the Chiddush, what Chassidus came to do, is that even those things of the Neshama should be able to shine in a more revealed way, having more of an impact on the body, and it should be more revealed to the world. How does this work? What does this mean? So the Rebbe says, generally speaking, the way the Neshama affects the body could be in two ways. One is that the Neshama is just ruling and forcing the body to be in a particular way, but the body is still felt as a separate entity for itself. Number two is when the neshama is so revealed when the guf doesn't feel itself as a metzias for itself. The Rebbe says we could see this even as regards to our guf and our nefesh habahamis. Our regular physical life force is supposed to be in a way, and in a healthy person it's a way, that it's not separated from the guf. There's no two separate things. There's the person and his life. Rather, whatever the nefesh wants, automatically his body is going to move in that direction, because of that bitul and that connection between the body and the guf. In a similar way, says the Rebbe, by a Yid is true also in regards to his neshama. That the ultimate way that it's supposed to be is that the neshama and the guf become so one that every aspect of our guf is only there to facilitate the neshama. In order for a neshama to be able to do what the Eibishter wants in tzitzis and tefillin and tzedakah and so on, so that's through the physical parts of the body. In other words, that the body is not seen as something for itself, but something completely one with the neshama, and there only to serve the Eibishter. The Rebbe says these two ways of looking at it, whether the neshama is only taking hold and control of the body, or the body is completely united with the neshama, is similar to a concept that's often discussed, the difference between kol ma'asecha l'shem shamayim and b'chol drachecha da'eu. Kol ma'asecha l'shem shamayim means when you're utilizing the world as a means to an end, as a means to help us serve Hashem. Kol drachecha da'eu is when the thing itself, the gashmi itself, is becoming holy. Not only am I eating to be able to serve Hashem, but the eating itself becomes a mitzvah, whether it's a seudas mitzvah, whether it's eating on Shabbos. In one of the footnotes, the Rebbe gives an example of Yitzchak planting and sowing just to be able to give tzedakah and meiser and so on. Says the Rebbe, these two ways, kol ma'asech l'shem shamayim and b'chol drachecha da'eu, are exactly the same points of these two relationships between the neshama and the guf. If it's a situation where the neshama and the guf remain two separate things, the guf is only there and going to listen to what the neshama wants, the neshama has to rule over the neshama, then we end up in a situation similar to kol ma'asech l'shem shamayim. Physicality matters, but yes, it's going to do everything to help us serve Hashem. But when the neshama is revealed in a much greater way, then the guf is never felt as a separate thing, and all matters of gashmis are only seen as a way to facilitate the ruchnius. It's only there to bring about the isgalus of the kedusha. Says the Rebbe, from this we also understand, the Rebbe says we could see this also in our physical body. When a person is healthy, so then you don't feel your body as much. The sign that a person is unhealthy is when he starts feeling the heaviness of a certain part of his body or the aches and pains in a certain part of the body. And therefore, the Rebbe says the same thing again is true with the neshama. That when our neshama is revealed, we completely don't feel any part of the gashmius. Rather, it's only there for the ruchnius. The Rebbe gives an example in regards to eating food. We're eating the food because through this we'll be able to make a bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, to reveal godliness in the world. The Rebbe brings a famous story of Rabbi Yamin Kletzker, a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, who was a lumber merchant, and at the end of the whole calculation in his business, what does he write? Einoid mulvada. In other words, that the sach hakol, the bottom line of all of his business, is only to serve the Eibishter. It's only about Hashem Echad. The Rebbe tells the story of the Alter Rebbe, where one time there was a very chashuv visitor that came to visit the Alter Rebbe. The family was preparing food. Each one wanted to prepare something. Famous story that they didn't know, it wasn't discussed who's going to add the salt, so everyone wanted to have the schus, and everyone added a little bit of salt. Now the food was very, very salty. When this person couldn't eat it, but the Alter Rebbe just ate it as if nothing happened. And the Alter Rebbe later explained that ever since he was a mezrich, he doesn't have anymore any sort of taste in the food in the Gashmis. And the Rebbe says even though we can't usually expect to be on such a high level all the time, nevertheless from time to time, we could at least be poil on ourselves that we should be so involved in thinking about our avodah that we're not getting excited and thinking about the taste of the food and so on. Bringing this back now to Yafutzu Meinesecha Chutza. Yafutzu Meinesecha Chutza means on the one hand that the wellspring itself is reaching to every single place, but also to the extent that Yafutzu, it's spreading in an unlimited way, that there's nothing of the world, of the outside world, that's remaining empty from the Elikus and from the Chassidus. In a similar way is true with our neshama. There's one way again that the neshama is just ruling over the body, but then there's, as we said before, the neshama completely is shining inside of the body to the extent where there's no part of the body that's left out of this. Says the Rebbe, now we can understand the message of what the Mizritcher Magid was saying when he was speaking about the idea that the Malachim are sent, but it's only the mamish of the Malachim, only the lower part of the Malach. The idea being is that when we are being sent into this world, this is similar to Yakov sending messengers to Esav, Esav representing the Birurim of our world. We have to be involved in the world in a way where we recognize that it is only the lower part of ourselves which are being involved in the world. On the one hand, yes, we send a malach. In other words, we need to get involved with our whole spirit. It's our ruchnis, it's our neshama. That's the malach, so to speak, inside of us that's going to get involved in the world. But at the same time, recognizing that every aspect of the world and every aspect of our involvement with the world is so bottled, is so completely nullified to the mission that it's here for, to the likus that it's inside of it, similar to the body that's completely bottled to the neshama, never taking up any space for itself, like the idea that we said, that so therefore when my mindset is in a certain place, or my ruchnius is in a certain place, even as I get involved with the gashmius into a particular area, I always recognize that's completely secondary to my main point and focus in what I'm supposed to be doing. The Rebbe says the same thing is true with the idea of the Shlichus that the Rabbeim gave us. The Rabbeim sent us into the world. On the one hand, we have to put ourselves, our neshama, into the place to bring light into the world. But at the same time, we need to make sure that the place doesn't influence us in a negative way. In order for that to happen, we always must remember that there's always that connection to the Mishaleach. We always feel that what we're here for is only purely for fulfilling the Ratzon of the Mishaleach, and therefore when we do it in that way, ultimately we'll bring the Mayonis Chutza, and we'll have the Esgalus of Mashiach taken from Yad Mamash.